weather sure hasn't kept people away from auditions for the movie Matewan. I'm standing in front of Mount Hope's Princess Playhouse, and that was the place to be today for all of West Virginia's would-be stars.
Does this mean that everybody sitting here needs a picture? Because I don't have tons of film.
It was a day for location casting director A.V. Kaufman to get a sense of West Virginians. And although there was no reading, she kept busy with the basics.
Interviewing, telling people what's in store, what it's like to be extra, what it's like to be in a movie, getting information from them.
Kaufman may hire as many as 400 extras, and 24 lucky people will get speaking roles. She says the film will gain authenticity because she plans to cast all extras locally, and she's looking for all types of people.
I mean, when I say all types, I mean grandmothers, children, families, you know. I mean, I can't say I'm excluding anybody yet.
And although all types of people showed up, most said they would take any part from a $20 a day extra to a better paying speaking role.
If I can, you know, sure, I'll take it, but if I can't get it, you know, I'll take what I can because I am going to be a star one day.
I strongly expect to be called back. I'm going home now and I'm taking out all my fetishes and I'm wringing my hands saying, oh, I want a speaking part.
Kaufman hopes to have the first callbacks auditioning by the end of next week. In Mount Hope, Jody Klein, Newswatch 4. These are the working hands that are giving some parts of Thurman, West Virginia a facelift, even if it is just temporary. Workers here are creating a new look for the town, the setting for Matewan, a movie based on the 1920 Matewan massacre in Mingo County. The movie is about a young union organizer who tries to coordinate three very different groups of people: the striking native miners, Italians that have just arrived in this country, and blacks brought up from Alabama to work as scabs with the Italians. Matewan producer Maggie Renzi says the union organizer gets everyone to work together, but that cooperation doesn't last long.
The Baldwin Felts are brought in, the stakes are raised by a murder of one of the young miners, and then finally this young union organizer who's a pacifist is just pushed aside, and the violence takes over, and these Baldwins are massacred on the main street of town.
The film's $3.5 million budget is so low because it won't be made in a studio. But Renzi says this setting is more authentic than a studio could be.
We look long and hard to find a town that is in the hills like this, that's set just like this, that has the kinds of buildings that we need, that has the physical, there's nothing like these hills.
Workers don't have much time left to breathe life back into this old town. Shooting begins September 3rd, when the streets will be filled with crowds and activity like they might have been more than a half a century ago. In Thurman, Jody Klein, Newswatch 4.
And thought, well, you know, there were kids back then, there's kids now, so maybe, you know, I could get my kids on, and just so someday they can say I was in a movie.
I'd rather have a speaking role, but I'll take anything that comes along right now.
Do you want to be a star?
It'd be nice. Well, I've taken some modeling classes, and I thought it'd be a nice experience.
So it's always fascinated me, and I've always been interested in it, so I thought, well, I'll try it out for the movie just to maybe just get a small part. I'll do anything, you know, be an extra or whatever.
Well, I ain't never been in none before, so I just thought it'd be a change.
What are you looking forward to most about being in the movie if you do?
Money.
Maybe some big guy will see me here, and then I can go on to be a big actor in Hollywood.
The modern-day train seems out of place in this section of Thurman. It's a place that artists and set designers have gone to a great deal of trouble to make old-looking. Maybe that's why you'd expect to see a train like this in the area. This is a 1944 765 steam engine on loan to the Matewan producers by the Fort Wayne Railroad Historical Society in Indiana. Society Director Liz Stevens says it feels good to see something the Society has restored get the recognition it deserves.
It's a man-made engine, you know, machinery, piece of machinery. It didn't come off a big prefabricated assembly line, you know, type thing. I'm very proud.
Charleston's 2700 Preservation and Restoration Society donated the caboose of the train in exchange for some bit parts.
They shipped all kinds of Italians in right off the boat, so they're still taking coal out of there.
I'd sure hate to get a whiff of that mine shaft.
We're supposed to laugh through.
The actual sets for the movie are closed to cameras, but we did catch this glimpse of one scene through the doors of the moving locomotive. The mood among the actors is cheerful. Most are excited about working with director John Sayles and stars like James Earl Jones. But then there are always things to be depressed about in showbiz, just like in any other field.
I had a beard for 15 years till 20 minutes ago.
Jody Klein, Newswatch 4, Thurmond.
White against colored, native against foreign, holler against holler.
Yeah, it's doing really well. You know, that's always sort of the after shot. You know, just getting them made is the hard thing. You know, and then you feel good about the people you worked on with it, and that's the important part. But it's nice when other people like it and say good things about it, because that helps get the audience in.
Really excited though to at least see the movie and all the acclaims it's got. We're going to have a good time in here.
Some of it's true and some wasn't true.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. And I'm 94 years old.
And you're Hatfield?
Yeah, my mother was a Hatfield.
Yeah.
Okay, first off, Mr. Sayles, from reading here, it took quite a while, or quite a bit of years of work to put this film together. Did this subject hold a certain fascination for you?
Yeah, I think it was a story that I came across when I was writing a novel quite a long time ago, about 8 or 9, maybe longer. And it was just a story I wanted to make a movie out of, and we just kept at it. So we came down here probably about 5 years before we made the film and scouted around, and then didn't have the money to make it, and came back a couple years later and scouted around some more and still didn't have the money to make it, and finally when we got the money together we were able to do it. So it was definitely I thought an important story, one that I wanted to make into a movie.
You obviously searched around a long time to try to find the right place to film this. How important was this small historic town? How important was it to find a historic area to shoot the film? Because that's the reason we're here, is to promote the historic preservation.
Yeah, I'd say that two things were important. One is to find a place that had most of the things that we needed already there, because Matewan is a very low-budget epic. I mean, it's a very big story on a very low budget, so that we couldn't afford to build a whole lot, and we also couldn't afford to take a whole lot away. We couldn't afford to bury power lines and take, parking meters away and unpaved roads and then repave them and all that kind of thing. And one of the nice things about Thurmond, although it is a operating little town and the white water goes through there and everything like that, is there's not that much up that wasn't around 1920. Most of the buildings there are from that era, and so all we had to do was really put some facades over things that had some gaps in them, and do a little painting and cover over one or two things without a whole lot of expense. So we were very lucky. One of the things that we were always looking for was a place that we didn't have to do too much work for, that also had some of the historical detail that we needed. Also, I think just kind of spiritually, or I don't know if there's a better word for that, we wanted to make it in West Virginia because it was a West Virginia story. So that's always where we started our search, is where can we find this in West Virginia? And we looked in some other states, but nothing that we found was that much better or as good as what we found here, so we really were able to keep it in the state. Well, I've appeared in a couple of the movies that I've directed, and one of the things I like about it is that when you're working with somebody, it's always good to walk in their shoes for a little bit. And so I tend to take small parts that I can do in like one day or so, and then I can get back on the other side of the camera. And it was a part that after I wrote it, I said, oh, I could do this. This is only going to be one day shooting. You know, I've been to, you know, revival meetings in deeper south than this, and have an idea of what to do. But also, you know, it always helps you feel like, okay, this is what it is to be in this movie. And this is some of the time problems that the actors are facing that I should be aware of as a director. And it's fun. Yeah, that's the other part of it.
I never will produce anything that I don't act in. And I have to have that policy because I'm not the writer. So I have to tell the writer.
Write something for me.
Write something for me. This part will do me. So in Matewan, I got to play the Italian woman, Rosaria, which was fun. Named her after my own grandmother, and found that the head of housekeeping at the Econo Lodge in Mount Hope, where we lived, her family had also come from West Virginia. I mean, had come from Italy, and in fact had come from the small town that our dialogue coach had come from. There was a lot of resonance for the the actors who were playing West Virginians, but there was also some resonance for me and the Italians who actually still live here in West Virginia.
Any problem?
A Department of Culture and History in the state of West Virginia. You actually can do the research right in West Virginia it was not difficult to find photographs of immigrant families here, and for the costume department and for the art department to be able to find pictures of the interiors of the houses, of the women and children and men in their clothes that were peculiar to each ethnic group that was there. No, there's nothing like doing a movie on location in the place where the events actually occurred.
One of the things we also found as we got here and started the pre-production on the movie was that it was sort of having a fact made not enormous changes in the story, because we researched that fairly well, but a lot of small changes. Local people were especially helpful to the art department.
Anything else is as good as this screenplay is, then we're in good shape. And then we went to West Virginia. And then it was clear that if we could just find the right place in West Virginia would be able to tell the story. Each day of shooting, we had that reinforced for us, I think. There were some really dramatic times when everyone was crying and we knew it was right, or everyone got all the jokes and the whole set was laughing and we knew that it was all working. But I would truthfully say that this was a screenplay that the day I read it, I knew it was going to be a really good movie.
Also, one thing that you find when a movie is really working is that the actors, some of whom were from out of state, some of whom were from Kentucky, some of whom walked on the set for the first time, got really excited. You know, they say, "Oh God, now I understand what this scene is really about." You know, whether it was in a tent camp that we built up in the state park, or you know, in a boarding house, or when our lead actor, who was playing Joe Kenahan, who comes into town on a train, took the train down. We had already started building the set, and he got off the train in Thurmond, just like he does in the movie, with a suitcase in his hand, and he walked out onto the set, and it was really like, wow, you know, I'm really here. And there isn't a film crew here. There's just the town of Matewan or Thurmond or whatever it is. But you know, then when that happens, when the actors really get excited like that, because you know, some of them are very professional and they've been on a lot of sets in their lives and everything, and it's hard to get them excited about something. You know that you know things are really working well.
Film, I'm much more involved in all aspects of the film than maybe a typical producer is. And because John and I lived together and started this project together so many years ago, we would turn scouting expeditions to West Virginia into sort of vacations. So the two of us started looking, I don't know, 5 or 6 years before we made the movie, I guess. On our own. And I like location scouting. I actually am particularly pleased to be invited to this conference because I'm also kind of a domestic architecture buff. And one of the things that I do when I travel is look at houses, take pictures of houses. And so that all fits together with I have a passion for location scouting. In another life, I'll be a location scout.
What was special about Thurmond to you? Just, I got John's impression. What were your impressions?
When we drove, Carolyn Ketchum, who works for the tourism department, which isn't maybe its exact name, but in lieu of a film commission, that's what Carolyn Ketchum did. She was our first liaison. And we'd call her up and say, we're coming down for another look, we're coming down for another look. And she'd say every now and then, you know, there is a little town right at the center of the whitewater rafting. We should go there sometime. We should go there sometime. But she kept trying to keep us close to Charleston, which is where the airports are, and our crew would be coming in and out of, and actors. Finally, one day, we got there. We got to this town that she'd been talking about, and we drove over the bridge and just put it in park. And we all got out. It was the production designer whose responsibility was to create this town, setting in 1920, and John and the co-producer of the movie with me, Peggy Reisky, and I stepped out of the car, and we all knew right away that it was exactly the right place, that nowhere else. It's like, I was just in Utah, Joe Smith saying that remarkable, unremarkable sentence when he finally reached Salt Lake, and he said, this is the place. Well, that was the place.
Yeah, I don't think it's just a matter of Les Blase. It was something that was very important to us. With almost all the movies we've made, there's kind of been an inner group that's not the kind of general movie-going public who the movie is about in many ways, and that's been very important to us. So the movie we made before Matewan, Brother from Another Planet, one of the best things that we had, because the movie was shot in Harlem, was an early screening before the movie opened for a youth group from Harlem, and all these kids ranging from 4th grade to young high school kids really liked the movie. And we realized, okay, we did our job okay. So having a movie do well in West Virginia and have people here, you know, understand it, like it, see their relatives in it, see their history in it, was very important to us. I do also think, because it is such personal history in many ways, that there wasn't that kind of thing of, oh yeah, that's something that happened in our state a long time ago, and it sort of has to do with us, but it's just the movies. So it's been very nice getting feedback and seeing letters to the editor, and you know, which very often are just kind of reminiscences. You know, sometimes it's sort of controversies that heat up again because it's unavoidable given the subject matter, but very often it's just people thinking about, you know, a relative of theirs who was involved in the, you know, Battle of Blair Mountain or something like that. And I think also that this is, West Virginia is not the first place that everything opens, you know, and so there's naturally going to be less of a blasé feeling about it. You know, it was one of the best things that happened to us was getting to come down here and premiere the movie down at Beckley where we made it, and, you know, have 200 or 300 people who were in the movie come and see it.
I also think there's a fellow named Frank Payne who plays an older miner in one of the opening scenes of the movie. And Frank's in his early 60s, and he was a miner for years and lives in Beckley. And he said something to me that I'll cherish for my whole life, which is, he said, for my whole life I've seen people take things away from West Virginia, and you people are some of the only people who ever brought anything back. I think people had that feeling when they saw the movie, that West Virginians run such a risk, obviously, of being misunderstood. I mean, classically, it's all dopey stuff like the Beverly Hillbillies. And rightfully, people were apprehensive, you know. So what are these northern kids going to do with this story, with our story, and with us, and the image of us? And I think that when it turned out to be really so positive, and I think truthful to a lot of people's experience, partly because they had shared their experience with us, it was getting twice as much as you ever thought you would get. And I think that's why in a way, their expectations were so important. When they paid off, I think people were happier than they ever guessed they would be.
Sword there?
I don't know exactly. Try the question again, and let me see if I can.
Well, I mean, in order to make the movie work, you needed a place that looked like it still looked maybe in the 20s. And you know, trying to make that work as far as West Virginia is concerned.
Well, to me, what this kind of preservation means is preserve all the different things that you have. That's a town that progress passed by after the fires there in 1931. That was really the end of it. I think that there's got to be some, we benefited from the neglect of that town, essentially, by anyone except for the Pugh family who owned it, and the railroads who owned part of the town, and the railroad who had to have the town just functional enough so that the Amtrak could stop there and the freight trains could go through. What I'm hoping that comes out of a conference like this, historic preservation, is to say, let's not just hope that progress passing us by and neglect is what people are going to come down here and look for. Let's try to identify what we have. All right, Mount Hope is a great town near Beckley that stopped in time absolutely in around the 40s. That's a great town. You could use that town to shoot 1986, 1970, 1988, or you could be very happy shooting there for 1940 or maybe even get away with 1930. There's a richness in this state as long as it can hold on to what it has and not just see it crumble or not have it endangered by the wrong kind of development. Either, so I call it tarting things up, making it so cute that we could never shoot there because everything's been so gussied up. Nor can you run the risk of, you have a beautiful block, every house on it is beautiful, and then somebody builds a gas station on the corner of it. Well, we can't come and shoot there, not if we need 360 degrees. A lot of what I'd like to encourage people to do is to really take a look at their own town and think, if a movie came in here, what would they be looking at? What's the character of our town? Is it that it's old? Is it that it's tiny? Is it that it's built on the side of a hill? Is it that only railroad tracks run through it and there is no main street? But to understand that something doesn't have to have a great architectural merit to be saved, but just has to have some integrity, has to be what it is, and not just like we could be in any state in the Union.
It's a very difficult thing to store, or the inside may be something totally different, but the people have somehow been able to keep the integrity of the building, which still looks like a beautiful old apothecary, and that's not necessarily what it looks at that angle of it.
Cult type of
Appeal to everyone in the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're always taking somewhat of a financial risk in a movie because it's so expensive to do. Make One wasn't the most expensive.